Hello! Today I am looking at the difference between the Little Office of Our Lady and the Rosary. Okay, quick summary of what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to go through time taken, efficacy, indulgences, the learning curve, access to materials, and lastly, variety. How much variety each of them packs. So, on with the video. These both are Catholic prayers that go back to medieval times. They both have roots in the Divine Office or Liturgy of the Hours, and this is a system of prayer often prayed together, so in a group, consisting of psalms, hymns, and spiritual canticles, like St. Paul says to the Colossians, chapter 3, verse 16. Let the word of Christ dwell in you abundantly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual canticles, singing in grace in your hearts to God. So you could say it's a biblical sort of thing. That's the Divine Office. So it's the Jews already had customs of praying the Psalms every day, and this continued into Christian practice. St. Benedict arranged the Psalms into 8 hours, prayed every day over a 7-day week. So it was 33 Psalms a day. There was some repetition, that's why 33 times 7 doesn't quite equal 150, but that's okay. Oh, also they sometimes split up Psalms, so you'd have, if it was a very long Psalm, like Psalm 118 is very long, using the Douay Rheims numbering, which is based on the Greek Septuagint. If you're Protestants, that'll have a different number because you're using the Hebrew numbering from a different version of the Psalms. But anyway, back. So, the Little Office of Our Lady is an adaptation. So St. Benedict himself said he could, you were welcome to rearrange the Psalms, make adaptations. For the full monastic thing, you wanted 150 Psalms. That was a very big thing, especially in medieval times where you'd have to have a written out, hand-copied copy of the Psalms. Some smaller devotionals were more accessible for people who couldn't afford a whole 150 Psalms copied out. But you could get a little office. This is not a medieval little office. This is a modern little office. But you get the idea. It's got lots of words in it. Yeah. This one's in Latin and English. For the purposes of comparing, since... yeah, you can say the Rosary in English, you can say Little Office in English. So I'm trying to avoid the English-Latin division because that's not a difference. They can both be prayed in English or Latin or both. So there's 33 Psalms in the Little Office. So it's about a one-day thing. It's a bit like sometimes in the Divine Office we have the custom of doing a special Saturday devotional dedicated to Our Lady. So it's similar. It could be said to be a subset. Anyway, I'm getting off the point. So passing on all these words depended on learning these by repetition and reading, and so there were still lots of people who couldn't read. So they grew up the practice of praying on beads. So the Orthodox still have a string of 150 knots or beads called a chotki. So there's one bead for each of the 150 Psalms. So they commonly pray a short prayer, like the Jesus prayer, on each bead, saying, Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. So same thing over and over again, simple, meditative. St. Dominic around AD 1200 promoted a variation on this called the Rosary, involving 50 Ave Marias, or 53 Ave Marias, or Hail Marys. So Ave Maria means Hail Mary, you got it. They both came up out of a need to adapt the Divine Office to make it more practical for people who couldn't afford a huge copy of all the Divine Office. So, yeah, one using beads and one using a cut-down version of the Psalms. Good. So, time taken. The time taken, praying the entire Little Office privately, just reading the words, you might be able to get done in an hour each day. Singing takes about 2 hours in total. So when I'm finding these things, I'm looking at my own videos on YouTube where I've made recordings. I haven't seen many other people doing the same sort of thing. So 2 hours in total for the whole day, but you don't pray it all at once. And you don't have to pray the whole thing. So singing Prime in the morning takes about 7 minutes. Saying it, definitely easily less than 5 minutes. The major hours takes about half an hour, so Matin, Lauds or Vespers. Saying them will take half that, so 15 minutes. So then you get on to praying the Rosary. Just privately, just saying the words takes about 15 minutes for the usual 5 decades. And some people just say 1 decade, which would be, easily under 5 minutes, like one of the little hours. St. Louis de Montfort encouraged people to take on the full 15 decades, which would be 3 times around the Rosary, which would take 3/4 of an hour. Or, it could be a bit longer with a bit of meditation. You see all these videos online. Some of them, the short ones are 15 minutes. You have other ones like the ones from Lourdes taking about half an hour. And you also have people putting together Gregorian chant rosaries Okay, Gregorian chant rosaries. I have a beef with them. I think they should be using psalm tones for the Ave Marias because they're being sort of like psalms. So, when we're doing the office, there's this repetitive sort of thing, da 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 da, over and over again. And but instead of doing that, they're using the antiphonal Ave Maria, which takes a lot longer. So, bug me to do my own take on the Gregorian chant rosary. But anyway, so the full antiphonal sing takes a good hour. Yeah, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. Now, another thing on how long to take saying the rosary is Padre Pio, who is known, and lots of other saints, known to just keep saying rosaries one after another. So that's how he spent his time, because there's so much to pray for. So either way, the time taken to pray the little office or the rosary could range from 5 minutes to half an hour or full hour, even 2 hours. So I think time taken is much of a muchness, really. Efficacy. I put in efficacy because I'm really being a bit cheeky here. So how do you measure the efficacy of Christian prayer? Do you get a little... It's the measure of how much charity with which you're making this prayer. And who knows the heart except God? So if God can see your heart, he can see how much love with which you're doing things. There's lots of stories of novice monks saying, oh, I want to be so holy like you, and doing hundreds of Our Fathers or something like that. And then they go over to show off how many Our Fathers they've done, and the mentor holy monk is just still halfway through his first Our Father. He's just doing it with so much love and devotion and getting caught up in. Anyway, but as we're humans, having prayers helps us. So even though one Hail Mary could be enough to get us to heaven if we could do it with enough love, as humans, we use bit by bit, we get there. Okay, so efficacy, God knows. Indulgences. Indulgences, I'm not going to go into the definition of indulgences. I did that last time I tried to make this video, and you will need to look somewhere else for the definition of indulgences. But if you know about indulgences, they have been greatly simplified since the 1960s. So, it used to be more persnickety rules on exactly how much of indulgence was attached to each separate thing. But now there's just partial indulgences and plenary indulgences. As far as I can see, there are plenary indulgences attached to the rosary, but not to the little office. So the Rosary of Our Lady wins on the indulgence scale. But they are both partially indulgenced, so they're both still indulgence works. So the plenary indulgence for the rosary, in case you didn't know, is if it is said in an oratory or a church or as a family or religious community under the usual conditions for plenary indulgence, which is communion on the day, confession plus or minus a week, and prayers for the Pope, and complete detachment from sin, even venial sin, which of course God alone can really judge. So that's why indulgences, not the guaranteed ticket that some people take them to be. Okay, learning curve. The reason why I make these videos on the little office partly is because I have a course on Udemy about learning this little office. Learning curve. So there is a bit more of a learning curve for the little office, I think. So learning to pray the rosary, you could find videos on it. You could go into your local church, Catholic church, and find lots of little booklets on how to pray the rosary. So I got some shorter ones. That's one that's a bit more elegant. Anyway, lots of things on praying the rosary you can find. It's okay. I think it's easy to find out how to say the rosary. There's lots of local variations, so if you see conflicting advice, there's not set in concrete, most of it. If you're learning little office, you still have to get over the ideas of which hours to say where. But really, if you're using a book, you really just have to read it, make sense of the instructions, and you just start at one spot and keep reading until you get to the end of that section. So I don't think it's a huge learning curve. If you want to learn all the music, that's a bit more because there's a lot more variety of music in the little office. If you want to learn to sing the rosary, you only have to learn 3 tunes and you just keep repeating them. So that's pretty good. Rosary, definitely easier to learn than the little office. Access to materials, I said before, you can find lots of rosary stuff everywhere. I've been hanging, there's cheap rosary beads, there's gaudy colourful rosary beads, and there's sensible wooden rosary beads. There are so many different types of rosary beads. You can get just knotted ones. You can tie 10 knots in a piece of string and use that. Sacramentally, if you get blessed rosary beads, that's good because Yeah, there's graces from physical objects. Also, people to fall back on having 10 fingers to pray the rosary. To pray the little office, the materials are fairly expensive. I mean, these books are hard to get hold of, and yeah, there's other copies that are all similarly priced. I'm going for the little office from the 1962 books because that's sort of what I'm familiar with. There's other little offices that are sort of more adaptations or interpretations. I don't know. You can find stuff. There's also booklets you can print off the internet, off my webpage, littleoffice.brent.id.au. So you can print off your own PDFs. There's websites which you can just pray from. You can be picking up your phone and actually scrolling through the prayers of the little office. It looks better if you're scrolling through a book, I think, but yeah, whatever works. And yeah, God reads the heart. Yeah. As long as you don't get distracted by all the notifications coming up on the screen or anything like that. Little Office isn't as accessible. You won't usually see copies lying around. They are out there. You can get them for free or get them for paid. It's also possible to memorize the whole Little Office, but it does take a lot longer than memorizing the prayers of the Rosary. So you'll probably be dependent on having a printed copy for a good month, even if you're just doing a short one every day. But it's a great thing to do, though, because you have all these prayers planted in your memory, and it's like making a beautiful garden with all the beautiful things in it, and you can have the most beautiful earworms once you've got all the music in your head. Yeah, so it's definitely worthwhile, but yeah, probably not as easy to access. So lastly, I put in this section on variety, or how many unique words you get when you're praying each of them. So the Rosary comes out 181 unique words out of 2,977 words. So that's at a rate of 6% unique wordsness. So it's sort of a measure of how interesting they are. For the Little Office, it looks like the average is about 30%. So you can see that's 5 times more variety than you get in the Rosary. So if variety is a bonus, then the Little Office wins by a factor of 5. There's the drawback of having all that variety it's the steeper learning curve and stuff like that. So, but anyway, that gives some sort of offset that otherwise it looks too skewed towards the Rosary. But the Rosary is fantastic. So in summary, time taken is a tie. Efficacy, God knows. Indulgences, the Rosary comes out a bit ahead because it has that plenary indulgence. But they're both partially indulgenced. Learning curve, Rosary is easier, quicker to learn. Access to materials, Rosary is ubiquitous, easy to find, and very cheap. People will even send them to you voluntarily if you find people who are trying to promote the Rosary. And finally, variety. Little Office, 5 times more variety than the Rosary. So there you go. That's your summary of Little Office versus the Holy Rosary. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And thank you for liking and subscribing if you like to like and subscribe. Hey, so what do you like better, Rosary or the Prime?
Prime, because it's shorter.
Mm-hmm. What do you like better?
Rosary.
Why do you like the Rosary better?
Because it's got the Salve Regina at the end. Bye.
Bye. God bless.
Bye. Bye. God bless.